Hi, let's see if we can't get into another coding stream. Excuse me while I sort this stuff out a little bit. I'm going to want to make this window bigger so that I can see chat, which can be right there, so I will look at you for that purpose. And hey, we are going to, firstly, I'm going to make sure that my gain is enough. So there we go. Yep, that's going to be loud enough, I guess. Let's work on cabs. I wish I could show you all the work that I've been doing on stuff. Hey, Young777. You've set aside like every 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Standard Time for me, ain't you? With a bit of, and somebody else. I'd love to be able to pronounce that name. I'm going to have to learn how to read that kind of thing. Also, I love that Mel is on Twitch, because Twitch is challenging for me. If people don't show up there, then they'll never start reinforcing it in any way. Yeah, I've got a number of things to talk about and a number of things to do, and here's one of them. We're going to, let me see, date created. What have I done most recently? This. So what I was doing is a guitar amplifier tester thing. Come to think of it, I can clear these markers. See how it says cut one? Don't actually need that there. And we can work with this, although it's not, I wouldn't call it great. It does not have very good impedance matching, but this is definitely a DI guitar thing. And by the same token, this is a much higher impedance. You'll notice it doesn't really sound that different. So a little brighter, darker. And then I got Gibson Les Paul with the classic PAF pickup, or at least a Gibson pickup. It's a somewhat underwound Gibson pickup that I happen to have. And then the DiMarzio again. This is going to be DiMarzio again because the levels. And that's probably more DiMarzio again. So what we're going to do is work on cabs a little bit. And what I mean by that is, let's open up our library, go to our AUs, and so I spent a little time pre-baking this cake before showing it to you. See how we've got this in here? Count 6, count plus plus, last ref, and so on. Guess what? We've got undersampling now. So I'm going to fool with this and see basically where it takes me. Oh goodness no. It's just doing something that's a little different, because I'm not going to get like real guitar sounds out of this. But thing is that people working in the box are not going to have access to amps and speakers and things If you did, I would recommend that you do stuff kind of like I did. For instance, you can get a, I'm not sure what Friedman Dirty Shirley is. You can get an Epi Valve Junior. Those are very cheap. It's a simple amp with the same kind of power tube as is in a Vox AC30 and a simple 12AX7 for the gain stage. You can tube roll it, as in you can get interesting tubes to go into it. And you can modify it if you're good with working with tube circuits, which be careful because I don't want people hurting themselves in high voltages. But the kind of people that are listening to what I do are the kind of people who fool around with things like that, and so you might be fine with it. If you are fine with it, then by all means, knock yourself out. Just don't electrocute yourself in the process. And here's what we're looking at. We've got our undersampling. Here's our different things. I think I have gone through and made sure that it's all, yeah, we're running double precision. One of the things I'm going to be doing in these editing days is getting into the global performance boost thing. I'm no longer sure I can get gain CPU efficiency boosts as much as was originally reported. A guy was like, it's 5 times more effective, and I'm not sure that's necessarily true. But I am going to see what we get, and I can measure it in Bespoke during my live streaming days. So what I'll need to do is quickly recompile the ones that I'm using in Bespoke, and that I believe is going to be the Mac VST signed ones. And I will do over all the ones that I'm currently using, and then fire up Bespoke before and after, and see firstly if I'm getting a big boost in performance. Secondly, if there's any consequence to the tone. Because what I'm thinking is there will be no consequence to the tone because we're orders of magnitude away from, like, we're talking, you know how I say dithering to floating 32-bit floating point can matter? Because there's that 25-bit, and if you do it over and over again enough, you can run into problems. If you're at double precision, you're a couple million times, because every bit is doubling it, and double precision is like 52 bits rather than the 24 bits of single precision. So essentially it's the same issue as at that stage you're dealing with the mantissa at its full resolution, but it's 52 bits instead of 24. That's a lot. Every doubling of the resolution is twice as many, so it's like millions of times more high res. I don't think there's anything to gain from adding another 10 bits or so by going to long double, and we'll find that out. That's something that we will be experimenting with and learning about. But for now, I'd like to work out a little bit with cabs and also see if there's any other changes I need to make. For instance, we've got this head bump thing. I might want to have a look at whether it's throwing DC information, anything like that. And I'm also going to want to port this to VST, and if this goes real well, we might end up doing that. But for the time being, we're going to build this from scratch. It's probably going to have a problem with it first time. Maybe not. Oh, I guess not. At any rate, next time it will not have any problems. And then if we go here, there is also other things that we can do if we get bored. It's the older version. Let's use the newer version. And let's go back to Twisted Wave, open our recent file, and then let's open up a particular thing, Effect Stacks Cab Stack. This is what I'm going to do to listen to what this stuff is doing. So we can use dirt. We can use edge. And here's what we're going to want to do with cabs, and I'll switch back and forth among these after hitting play. But I am going to want to have this accessed so that I can there's some dirt and no cabinet, but this is meant to sound more like a cab. So small combo. So we're doing this stuff at 96K, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. So let's hear if this starts to sound realistic. We've got our, here, just a moment. If I arrange these just right, I can switch among them, because I'm going to need to do that. Heavy distortion. Now, since we're on small combo, let's see about adding some of that. So that's not too far off. What do we get with this? I do not know when the plugins, hang on. I do not know when you're going to see the plugins in iOS because I'm not currently programming for those. It's not impossible, but I'm more likely to be targeting like the new upcoming format clap. I'm not really sure how when I don't really use iOS for audio things, so it's not come across my radar very much. That said, I am compiling the plugins for signed AU. So if there's a fairly straightforward method of switching it over to having it be, IS compatible AU, that's not impossible, but you gotta let me do some of the work that I'm doing first. I've got some things in the transom. Let me tuck that over here so I can see roughly where everything is now. So how about going to the Gibson chords. So there's a humbucker using dirt. We can adjust low pass to sort of tailor it. Well, the thing is, there's hundreds of plugins, and none of my plugins go through the App Store. Let's keep fooling with this. So that's not so far off. As far as sounding like a small amp that's close up, this is not too bad. I should look and see what Fizz Disrupt is actually doing. So this is making, here, let's go to the Strat saw. So this is not too far away from, it's loud too, isn't it? But that's part of what we're shooting for, is I'm looking to have this be a very intense, high energy sound in the mix. This is meant to be kind of like a champ or something. It's a small combo. So we're using dirt and voicing it in a particular way. On the end result, it's pretty good to do that with a high pass on the very front. This is something that I do with real guitar amps. And the guitar amp that I use, it's so loud that it's distracting. Damn. Turn it on, turn it down more. That's the goal, is you want to make it so it's like, damn, I have to pay attention to that guitar. It's so distracting. You can't ignore it. That's the idea, wanting to get there. But yeah, as far as tailoring in the sound on a guitar sound, one of the things that I do is the middle stages in my real life tube guitar amp are using expensive film capacitors that are larger values than you normally find in a guitar amp. They're like audiophile tube amp grade kind of things. I don't remember exactly which ones they are, but they're sort of large, heavy caps. And through the entire output stage, the caps are oversized. They're larger than the stock Valve Junior cap is, but the input cap is not. The very first cap before all the distortion and everything, that's the one that needs to be smaller, because it does this. This is me doing it with a plugin. If you have that very first cap, or that very first filter, which is what this is before the distortion stages, as the one that's rolling off the lows, then the lows get to bloom in the output stages and have more fullness, whereas if you cut the lows afterwards, you get a sort of ratty, buzzy sound going on. So we dial this in, and low pass, not quite the same. We can... One thing we can do is make this so that it's darker, like having it set up like this, bright. It sounds like a little small speaker, but if we were trying to make this sound more like a small combo with a 12-inch speaker. This you could call like a champ. This would be like an 8-inch speaker. It's still a tube amp. It's meant to be. But, and let's take off the fizz disrupt. So that'd be like a 8-inch speaker, thereabouts. Whereas if we decide that we want to have it be a larger size, let's take it to a 12-inch speaker, also a small combo. Firstly, that means bigger low end, and we'll take the low pass in here to make this darker. That's going to help suppress aliasing on all the distortion factors, so it'll just generally help with that. Let's go back over to the Gibson chords. So this should sound kind of like a Blues Junior or something like that. It's a small combo. And you can get that sort of boxy quality out of it. And the hope is that it's a sort of low gain quality, but it's giving you some of the desired effect there. Now say we were driving it harder, we've got a bigger, like a DiMarzio. That's a little more like what you'd hear out of, oh, go away, spammer, nobody's paying attention. Don't follow that link, it's not even a link. This is what you get putting a high gain pickup into the small combo kind of thing. So now let's start exploring something else, like a different model. How about, well, first let's hear what bass amp does. We got this heavy range and heavy boost. Let's see what this does now. Because we got a thump in here. That's kind of beefy, low. That's more like the boost that you get off of a 15-inch speaker, thereabouts. More color boost. That's a slightly smaller boost. That gets quite heavy. gain boost there. In fact, we are clipping. Whereas with this, we're no longer clipping. So this range appears to be larger than Marshall stack size, like 15-inch speakers or 18-inch speakers. One thing about my monitoring here is that even through the lavalier mic, you can definitely hear that as a heavy-duty thump. In fact, it's making my entire room rattle. Fizz disrupt is not a particular frequency range. In fact, I should have a look at what that actually does, but for now, let's continue to fool with heavy range. That's a smaller cab size. That, of course, is huge. I would say about a third of the way up, we're starting to talk about like Marshall or Mesa cab kind of thing. Whereas acting a little more like open back. And the thing about this is this is helping to do a thing that's a little bit like taking the microphone and having it be directly on axis and then moving it over to the side of the cone. So we've moved it right over to the side of the cone, off to the center again. So I'm thinking about maybe readjusting some of these things. Cabs has impulse it not only has impulse responses, but it has a kind of dynamic convolution thing going on inside it that is not based on anything from the real world. I worked on available impulses from, I think it's like Noise Vault or whatever, something that was licensed to be usable, and then altered them and changed them so they're not even anybody's impulse anymore. But then there's a dynamic convolution thing that's combined with that, with the result that these are not really anything that you would recognize. So where I was leaving off is I feel I have a relabeling thing going on. We could call this off axis. Because that would be a darker sound. And then that's much brighter, that's on axis. So we call this control off axis. And this could be cab's size, but it needs to be reversed, I think. Because that's big. And that's very small. So let's quick go in and do that. Because part of this kind of thing is always about getting stuff that you can use rather than just getting stuff, you know, and making it. It's about how do we get this usable. So we'll call this off axis. Because that's your mic position. And we'll call this cab size, it relates to off-axis because you'll hear more of that as you go more off-axis, and I'm probably going to need to figure out something to do, and let's change color boost to intensity. Everybody likes intensity, right? And I'm going to need to figure out what fizz disrupt seems to me to be, because that's not a useful label. That's from way back in the day, and that's all fine and good, but I don't call that a useful label. I'm not sure what, fizz disrupt would mean, so I need to experiment a little bit and find out what it's doing. And again, cab size, a Marshall or a stack, which is what people will probably want to go for, is at around 0.3. It's about a third in. And if I flip it so that size gets larger as you go up, it'll be at around 0.6. So we'll call it around 0.66. And off axis, you don't necessarily want it to be the first thing you hear is directly on axis. Maybe I would like that to be 2/3 of the way over as well. I'll check that and see what it feels like. Fizz disrupt I'm going to leave alone for now. Let's have everything be about 2/3 of the way over for starters, because we can definitely have intensity be higher than 0.5. I was finding some good results in there. And we got a flip. See, this is, and yeah, like you said, here's the impulse responses. They're just hard-coded in there. I have very little access to this stuff anymore. And everything that you were hearing previously in previous weeks was this being run at 96K. Like, you couldn't actually hear the tone of it anymore. And it's being done in a very weird, primitive way. Which is like, okay, this is all fun. This is an old plugin. Now let's see, so let's see. Cab size was parameter 4. So parameter 4 is the one I'm going to want to flip. And here's how we do that. Unless I miss my guess, and this is worth checking, 4 goes from 0 to 1, just like a VST would do. So what we're going to do is put it in parentheses, just because I always like doing that. And 1.0 minus get parameter 4, exactly the same behavior, except that it's now biggest at the opposite extreme. And this is not a logarithmic control. Like we can see here, nothing unusual about that. So it's a linear 0 to 1. So now it's a linear 1 to 0. I've flipped it. I've flipped it by using the same parameter on parameter 4. It's all in parentheses now. And it's 1.0 minus parameter 4. That made it go oppositely to what it previously did. And this other stuff is basically just kind of, this might be using a more intense DC block, meaning I won't necessarily have a problem with it. Let's see how this rolls. Fortunately with the subwoofer, and anybody who's interested in the subwoofer that you're hearing such lows from, you can build one of your own. I have a YouTube video on that. It's 4 12-inch speakers. They don't have to be very expensive. MCM used to do those, but now there's another website where you can get that stuff. And a large sonotube. a large cardboard tube you can get at like a building supply store that fits the ring of the speaker needs to tuck into that, and then you assemble it by soldering the stuff together and then assembling the enclosure by putting the speakers into the opposite ends of the tubes and having aluminum tape to seal around the speaker and hold it on. And then you put another pair of speakers in a push-pull configuration. You can also call that isobaric. And the other speaker, the magnets poke out, and they sit over the first set of speakers, meaning that you have four 12-inch speakers. They're pulling in opposite directions on the either end of this tube. And then you've got another set further shaping, like, it's like having a passive radiator, right? Like, if you just had the speakers, you'd get bass, but it would also be able to do a lot of other things. But you have it coupled into this moving air mass that is the woofers facing each other. And the one is doing bass frequencies, and the other one is trying to extend on the bass frequencies and is using the first speaker as a spring, which is what an isobaric thing is, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. That on both ends of a tube, which you can fill with fiberglass or bubble wrap, also works. And in that way, you get a speaker cabinet that's capable of doing really deep bass, because you just have a lengthy tube. You have the tube as long as you can fit into your space. And that's enough room to enclose bass frequencies and be able to get a lot of mileage out of that. So it works real good. I recommend that. It's very affordable, very accessible. You don't even need woodworking tools to do it. You do need to solder, or at least be able to assemble speaker cabinets and wires. But yeah, and I have a YouTube video on that. But for now, I've just done this, and I'd like to build it. And we're going to return to where I left it. I keep copying it over onto this because I have the thing sitting. Oh, did you look at the double long versus long, or double versus long double thing? How did it work out for you? Did you try it and measure what kinds of gains you get or don't get? Because I'm still on the back of that. I feel as if even if I can get like 10 or 20% out of there, it's probably worth it. I don't think you're going to hear a difference. And I think depending upon the system that you're on, there might be substantial gains. I'm not sure how substantial, but it might be. So Freyskin, let me know if you tried it and what kinds of gains you got, if any. I will be able to measure that. I'm going to be doing some experiments along those lines. But yeah, did I remember to copy this over? Yes, I did. It didn't say an older item. You know, here's the thing, Freyskin. If the variables I'm calculating on are running long double and the bus is long double and all of the median calculations are running long double, it should be honoring that. It would be kind of messed up if it didn't. Whereas if I'm running entirely on, this is why Surge uses a 32-bit bus. Surge synthesizer uses a 32-bit bus and makes all of the things be 32-bit because they're able to get more efficiency that way. Oh, and channel 9 you can put anywhere you want because it's just a tone coloring device. That's all it is. So let's fire this stuff up again and see whether it looks any different to me. Here's our guitar setup. Here's our cab stack. kept having to pad the output level. I will be trying it with Galactic. Galactic is one of the plugins in my bespoke setup. You can put channel 9 anywhere you want. Here, let's go back to the bass amp. So if this works, a little. It definitely gets real big. On axis. So never mind this bass amp. Oh wait, we're still on the bass amp. Let's not be small combo. So a little tiny cab. And again, some of this stuff. Part of getting the small cab is manipulating the distortion so that it sounds more like your little tiny amp. So Phraseskid, here's the thing. I'm not sure what you were running or what compiler you were using, but if I tell the program to be using long doubles, it shouldn't be just using doubles. It can't use the same CPU registers because part of this is being able to do like scientific calculations, and the compiler should honor when you tell it to use 80-bit floating point numbers, not the same CPU registers. So something funny is going on there. In any case, we shall see. And Galactic is one of the things I'm going to be trying. So I would ask, what system are you doing this compiling on? What compiler are you using? Because that could be kind of worrying if it's not actually doing the thing it's supposed to do. Let's see if we can make a Fender Twin out of this. Twins are very bright, so we'll make it very bright. It's an open back cab, so it's not that huge of a cab. So you think basically on the system that you're using, and it's C-Lang, so does that mean that you're doing a Mac compilation and build on Intel x64? Because honestly, it shouldn't be ignoring the long doubles, and I don't think mine are necessarily doing that. Maybe you've got a compiler setting different or something? Because I'm telling you, the compiler settings throw me every time. They're terrible that way. Let's put a Strat through the Fender Twin. twins are very hard to distort. My challenge with the twin sound, I can get some of the impact out of it, but where I'm failing is the airiness, because that's going to depend upon the input impedance being right, and my recording does not have the right input impedance. Although what I could do is try to fight that. Oh, looks like I can do all right with this one. Fair enough. So there's our ice pick in the forehead tone. In fact, if I use both of these, that seems about right. So we're going to use Air 2 to boost the highs. And we're going to turn the dirt back up again. You might as well have some of this. Yeah, so our continually evolving Fender Twin Town. We're starting to get into that ice pick in the forehead tone that a real twin has. Now that we've got fizz, let's disrupt it. What do we get here? Okay. This sounds quiet. And as I keep adding it, here, let's play with this a little bit. Oh, wait, I'm doing this all wrong. Hang on. That needs to go first. what we're trying to do. We can get that sort of Fender twin tone, which is like way too much headroom. So here is my best shot at what a twin feels like. Well, at least I'm getting there. When you're like right in front of it and it's fairly on axis, I think Fizz Disrupt is starting to give me the sound of when you are making the amp so loud that it's distorting the air. Listen to this. Think of like Stevie Ray Vaughan sounds. In fact, I can probably help that by adding something to the effect stack. Hopefully my CPU will handle it. We'll add one more thing to the effect stack, which is, let's use chamber. I've got that in here, yes? Yes, I do. Because here's what we're up to. We're shooting for a sort of Stevie Ray sound going on here. Now, if we were not loud, oh no, that's the lows. We're going to want that to be open as far as it'll go. So we roll off the highs here. We roll off the lows here. And that's sustained. We don't want that. And that gives us a sort of echoey quality that is going to be just enough to sound like we're in a loud amp, and the amp is so loud it's bleeding into everything. Now, since we're going for a sort of Stevie Ray ultra loud Strat sound, here's what I'm going to try to do. I want to see whether I can get Fizz Disrupt to give me the correct tonalities as far as it being a really loud guitar. Because I believe that's going to be a better, more accurate picture of what that control seems to do. And that means I have to figure out what to call it. I wonder whether I should increase this, whatever it's doing. Quieter with the mic turned up, and louder. Because you have more of those transients, then as you keep turning up, you're starting to distort the air. Let's stop listening to that silly. People are like, oh, dude, you're such a good guitar player. No, not really, but... Instead, let's do humbuckers and twin turned up all the way. Let's dial back chamber a little bit. So here's the idea. So this should be like you're miking the amp real close, but it's not turned up very much. Here, I'll adjust it even further. So here we are with a tone, no fizz disrupt, and this is feeling kind of small. It is feeling like you're miking it close up. It still sounds like maybe a speaker, but it's not been turned. It's like going through one of those power soaks, like a Tom Scholz power soak, where the speaker is not being overdriven very much. On the other hand, if we did this, it's darker because we're losing all of the clarity. This is more what you'd get out of just slamming the gain so high that all of the things in the signal chain are just begging for mercy, and you can't get high frequencies through air turned up that loud as well. So I'm looking at some way to describe what happens here. We can go a little more on axis. Because the way it feels, extremely high speaker volume, somewhat less, and very little. So this starts to sound more like you've got it in a room. Maybe your mic is even a little ways off the speaker. And it's just suppressing that crunchiness, the clickiness in here, We can also pull back intensity a little, I think. And if we have it almost dry, I can hear the noise shifting. This effect is more like what you get when the speaker is real loud and you've mic'd it up. Whereas this, your speaker volume level isn't as high. Let's also make output level just say output. That feels right to me. So where were we? We're going to call you just output because that'll be the same on the VST. And this disrupt business, I'm thinking of calling it room loud or loud room. Loud air. Here, give me a second. It's cold and I need to throw another log on my fire. Be right back. Gotta keep that going. Alrighty, so that should catch pretty soon. I should be able to see if it does or not. If it doesn't catch, I'll have to run over again and do it. Room loud seems about right to me. I'm not sure whether I need to rearrange the positions of these things. Let's default this to about 0.5 and see what we get. And this is all in my sort of Fender twin tone at the moment. I'm going to investigate and see what actually is going on with this. And yeah, granted, it's a little hard to read with the chat being the size that it is. These are things that we can develop going forward. Defizz is slew. Well, that would explain a lot, wouldn't it? Yeah. Threshold 1 minus get parameter param3, comma 3. So what that's doing is the threshold at 0 is going to be a slew threshold of 1. It will allow slew to move that fast. If threshold gets much smaller, it can go all the way to 0. 0 slew should actually not let anything happen, so something's going on there. But we can fool with it and find out what. One thing I can do is go and find where that is being done, and that apparently is right here. So this, okay, so I see what's going on here. The reason it's doing what it's doing is because we have a okay, I'm wondering now whether I can fix a thing here. This is definitely where that happens. And it happens right up front before the convolution, which is probably correct. Unless putting it after would be good. I'm not sure about that, but we could try it. But here's the thing. This is trying to do the funny interpolation thing that I was doing. And that's causing it to have some of the sound that it has. It's similar to the difference between slew and slew 2. But I'm now wondering, like, if clamp is larger than threshold, that's okay, so that's strictly the slew rate. If negative clamp, shouldn't that be less than negative threshold? You know what? Let's try it. Let's try it and find out. That, or if clamp is larger than threshold, then we cut that off. If how does this frickin' thing work? And we got to do it twice, whatever it is. You know what? Maybe just experiment with it. One thing about this is these are very simple statements. As such, we can totally do this because this is the guts of how this actually works. Maybe I should work this out on paper a little bit. Here is my note that I need to update DuckReca because it has a random that doesn't work very well on Linux because rand in Linux blocks thread access. But yeah, so 0.1, 0.5. So if the sample is this and the previous sample was that, then maybe working it out on paper is not actually useful. So clamp is going to be positive if it's a massive positive swing. No, I have not released cabs for VST, so it's just going to be called cabs. I'm basically going through and figuring out all the stuff that needs to be cleaned up in the earliest version from like 2007, because it feels like this starts to actually have usefulness, and I might as well roll with it properly using the things that I've learned. Here's one of the things is clamp is either going to be positive or negative depending upon what kind of swing we've got. If clamp is positive, that means that input sample is way bigger than last sample. And if it's more than threshold, then input sample becomes effectively last sample plus threshold. If clamp is wildly negative, it's because input sample is way smaller than last sample. And so if negative clamp is larger than threshold, that flips the negative over to be positive, and then if it's larger than threshold again, it can't be that positive or negative, and so input sample becomes last sample minus threshold because we checked on whether it was negative clamp. Okay, we got there. So this is not actually wrong, nor does it need to have its polarity switched. And the reason we still get signal through is, I think, having something to do with the way that this is a... do I have an ATA last sample? And I do. Go away, spammer. Nobody is following your link. Nobody follow that link. Honestly, I'd love to be able to get away from YouTube and just be doing this on Twitch, except for that there's not enough people following me on Twitch. But Twitch doesn't seem to have those people. Could deputize somebody as a YouTube mod just to nuke things like that. So where do we combine these things? Retain only difference with raw signal. That's interesting, because we're applying this not in a interpolated way, but this is just the EQ. And so if I don't do that in front of the convolution, this won't do anything. This is the weird reconstruction stuff. What if I double slew clamped it? Oh, I can just last post sample. All right, we're going to try something else, see what we get. See where we say last sample? So we're going to call that last post cab sample. Everything else stays the same. That means we're also slow restricting after we applied this convolution thing, which might be kind of important. We're going to see what this does. And since we're not doing it on the interpolated sample, only the first one we do that, because we're going to leave that alone because it's part of the sound, the original thing. And we're going to include the head bump in case it smooths anything out. Okay, that's interesting. We're doing a separate head bump for that. Okay, if you say so. We've already got clamp, so we don't need to redefine it. Same phenomenon. Same phenomenon. We're slew clipping this. But we're doing it we're doing it before the convolution and after the convolution. And I wonder whether it would be convenient to, since we're doing a separate, or we could literally do it after all the recombination and everything. Yeah. We'll take that out. And we're going to put it literally on the absolute end. Now we've got a direct slew clip on just the absolute end. If this does not work out, we'll try something else. And I'm concerned enough about that that I'm not sure I'm going to just, let's assume we don't have this yet. So if this don't work, we'll try having a post cabs thing, but post head bump also maybe, but before the weird, because that's a weird oversampling thing I did back in the day. We got that. Oh wait, did I, hang on a second. Did I do the thing? The thing I have to do. Must have. All right. And let's go back to that. We've got some of these things set up appropriately. We're going to have some of this stuff set up so that I can get back into that effect. Conveniently, it remembers what it was, so okay, that's interesting. Something happened. Yep, we got a problem. Something happened. So it did not like that one bit. Not one little bit. Oh, I know. I know. This isn't necessarily all that's wrong, but guess who didn't initialize all their variables? Look at this. I don't know whether smooth A and smooth B have anything in here. Is this even in here? I got a feeling smooth A and smooth B aren't here, that it was some previous thing I had going on. Well, that aside, I found what made that thump. We have to make this be 0, 2. Otherwise, the whole thing becomes really unhappy because it starts off with a value that's like insane and stuff. Now let's find out how we're doing with this. I'm sorry for how tedious this all is. Some days that's just the job. And unfortunately, this blocks my screen so badly that I have to just close things until I need them. See, so now I can talk. And back again, please do not thump. Please make a noise so that I can hear whether it did the thing I was wanting to find out about. Also, let's do this and then save what we've got, because I think I kind of failed to do that again. Yep. Okay, it didn't die. Now, chamber. Air 2. Dirt and edge. We can close chamber, we can close air 2. We're doing our large combo. We're going to open up dirt and alter this until we've got back into that ice pick tone. Clean it up a little bit by cutting off some of those lows. Getting our old ice pick in the forehead tone. Now that we've saved it, room loud with the new slew. That's what I thought was going to happen. We can really crunch it down that way. arguably too much. There's no real benefit to making it be absolutely silent. So, next experiment. The previous one, going into the system, let me have output because it was acting like there were two of them on either side of the oversampling thingy that I had there. Oh, well, let's quit out of Twisted Wave first. Now that I've got one that's working on the overall sound, it is indeed able to crush the sound down to nothing. That's not necessarily what I want. So let's go and refresh our memories as to what lived up here. See, this did not make everything go absolutely silent. This stuff here, which is the same as I've got before, in the position that it was in, you could not make it go absolutely and totally silent. With the one on the end, you can, and there's no change here. So what I'm going to be looking for is why this is different. I can see one thing going on, which is that I am doing last sample over again. And that is not really how this should work. So let's explore that. Because it's letting through something. It's like it's letting through the interpolated version while stepping on the regular version, which is fine as far as it goes, but I question how useful that is. Thing is, though, that's what I had, so it might be interesting to well, let's find out. Boop. We'll replicate the same thing post-interpolation. And then we're going to move it in front of this after head bump, which is separate for each. That describes what we're actually doing. Go away, spammer. I'm going to be finished with this coding for a bit, but there's no reason to not. Haha. See, spammer, we can't see what you wrote now. Now what we're doing is we're going to make all these last samples be last post samples. Oh, hang on. What's going on up here? What did we have originally up there? ATA half dry sample. So clamp is working normally on the direct input. However, we're doing it again with this slew clamping based on halfway sample minus the dry sample. What's going on there? We don't have much clamp is, okay, half dry sample is equal to halfway, okay. The hell? So clamp always equals 0. That ain't right. Let's put in a half sample and see what we get out of there, because that means nothing. Got to do better than that. Alrighty, so we actually need to keep track of those because what we were doing was meaningless. Might explain why it was a little odd, but I think the general concept is still good. And I like doing it twice here. And I don't think we're doing a damn thing with smooth, so let's see whether we can get rid of that and see whether it does anything. And of course we got to initialize, so there. Now with this we can actually work on real information. Last sample and last half sample. We'll slow clip that. We'll do it directly. And then we will do likewise on the very end here, which I think I moved to after the head bump stuff. So we're going to use that, and this, and this. Okay, in theory, this should work. Not only that, I believe it will be able to clamp the volume down to nothing, which we might want to restrict, or not. Depends. But with a bit of luck, this is going to make a coherent thing that makes sense. But we can but try, because here's where we, and also I put a log on the fire. I was trying to figure out whether it had actually gotten on fire or not. Having it smoldering is bad for your chimney. At least we've saved the effect stack. maybe I'll restrict it to around here, because if we push it all the way, all I get is some dry. How does that interact with intensity? It doesn't. How does it interact with? It doesn't. So if I can clamp this off completely, nothing changes. But this gives me a zone where I'm actually having this little clipping and it does something. And I can also add a gain boost to compensate. I am still curious as to why this is happening. This has got something to do with what I was doing with the that ATA oversampling stuff that I do. My question becomes, does this sound louder as I start to push it, even if there's a dry wet in there, where I wouldn't want it to do this, but so this is sort of excessive volume sound. One thing for sure, in this zone it has that tonality of just far too loud. What I don't understand is why I'm still getting this dry in here. Previously it was able to silence itself completely. So let's go back and look again. I'll probably finish this up around 3, folks. Oh, and we want to quit that. So I have instantiated these things correctly. It's all undersampled. There's the anti-aliasing that's supposed to be there. Cab style slew clamping. So what would happen if I move this to in front of that? Nothing to it but to do it. Let's find out. This should work either place. So here's us doing our head bump calculations. And here is where we have just restored it after doing that cabinet emulation convolution. So let's just see what changes, if any. Now we are doing this in front of the heaviness and beef calculation in there. That said, we will see whether it actually works. Here's our file. Here's our effects stack, just as we had it. Okay, this is too much, and I'm disappointed in how it's not actually going away. I'm disappointed in what I get after this. I feel like it shouldn't be. Well, there's some sort of calculation in here, but around 3/4. Because what I can do, and that did seem to work as far as like working with the it's about 3/4. What if I called it? Yeah, but it's worthwhile. Let's smooth it out a little bit. Let's find out what I called it. Room loud. So this is going from 1 to almost nothing. So what I can do is add something, and I can use param6 to figure that stuff out. So guess what? Now I have this to play with. Let's dial this stuff in, shall we? Now we can do this by ear. So since threshold's operation is inverted, 1 is with it set at 0, and 0 is with it set at 1. When we turn it all the way up, threshold's ability clamps down to where we're restricting the amount of slew rate that we can get. It's been updated in a variety of ways to make it so that it sounds correct. And then the that's how we get the effect. And so when we add param 6, what we're doing is, if it's on the low setting of room loud, where it's not distorting the air much at all, threshold becomes a large value, so adding something to it does not hurt. In fact, it'll open things up even more. And then as we continue moving it, it will get progressively smaller and smaller until param 6 is the smallest it will get. So I need to quickly build this, run it, and measure what I got. That is a rather big difference. A Sans Amp or a Mesa Boogie Twin V. Alrighty, let's see what we got. Let's see what magic setting I need to put into here to make this work. Because there's going to be other things as well that I will need to compensate for. That's another story, though. There's our guitar. Here's our effect stack. Output is actually at 0.5, so now if we play this, we'll hear something. I think we need to crank that back up to the 3 again. But we should be able to dial this in regardless. Let's turn it back to those chords. Something that feels like far too loud of a room. Let's shut off chamber and just hear it. About that. And back into the grind. Let's see what we can make happen. Guess what? We found our setting, but we wanted to go back to this, or maybe even more so. Let's see what kind of range we get there. And this can go back to its original purpose, having found the variable that I wanted. And we're going to build again. And see what we got. So the way this should work now is if I turn up that room loud thing, it'll start getting an increasingly big loud tone with the air distorting, although I'm still concerned about the fact that I do not have... Maybe I need a third clip after the others. I mean, bucket, let's give it a try. Third slew clip incoming. I'll call it final clip. Post sample. Yeah, thought I was joking. And this stuff not being there changed nothing, so it's not actually being used. I could have called that last post, but meh. Goes away. That goes away because we had not been using it. And now we dive into here. We're working with input sample. So we go after all this stuff, and we go after all this processing just before we hit the output. And we might even want to do this separately. Like we might even want to have this be a different threshold. But I'm not sure, so we'll try it like this for now. That does appear to be everything. And let's see what we got. One thing about this will clamp down to however much I need it to clamp down. It's just a question of, is that too much? Does it sound good? And so on. Here's our this. Here's our that. Hit play. You know what? I think that might just about work. It's more... We don't need to go this far. And we don't need that much. Quick little change. This is pretty much free hacking over all this kind of stuff. Don't need to go here. No change needed there. But I'm going to need another threshold control. And let's juice that up just a little bit. So twice the threshold on there. It should still be able to clamp it down pretty good. I don't know whether I need to add even more. And here's the thing. See, I need to bump up the gain a little bit relative to how much I'm cutting it back. Loud room shouldn't be making things quieter. It should be another sort of boost, an enhancement, and threshold is getting cut down to next to nothing. So, if threshold and post threshold ought to be working, I guess we'll find out, won't we? Post threshold can't be threshold squared. Oh, I've got an idea. Square roots. Square root of something tiny like that is going to be a lot bigger. As such, if we get tiny little values in regular threshold, it'll make it be more normal. They'll tend to converge towards 1. Let's see what we've got going on here. So if I have a 0.02, square root of that is 0.14. Square root of that is 0.37. If I have a 2, square root of that gets smaller, converging to 1. If I have 0.5, square root of that gets rather bigger rather fast. If I divide by something smaller, it'll make it larger. So we're going to divide by post trim and assume that's always going to result in something that is not 0. No, I got a calculator, see? I was hitting this special button to do it. No, I was not calculating. I could have been very impressive in pretending that I was, but no. See, ain't I honest? I told you the truth. Even though I could have made hay off of... Oh, why, yes, I am calculating square roots in my head. You know what? I need to go to school for more math. It's one of the things I need to do. So here's our second wave of clipping. Here's our combination. And then here's our final. I think that's how I spelled it. And I think that's what I called it, but let's go and find out. I was just there. I was thinking ahead of things. And post threshold, there's 2 T's, lower in capital, and post trim. And this might just work. Let's find out. Again, this is a higher threshold. Yeah, I know, right? It's a higher threshold for the slew clipping of this very final stage, which is way more sensitive for being able to crush stuff. And then the trim is making it be louder, and it's all square roots to square roots and stuff, but I only have to calculate those once per buffer because it's not being done on a sample by sample basis. Only every time I come up with the variables do I need to do it. So we can sort of get away with that. It's not being done every sample. It's only being done every buffer. Looking good. unless post-trim is ever 0, in which case we have big problems, but I don't think it can be. I'm specifying it pretty directly. Let's see what we got. We're doing all of this stuff with the Fender Twin, partly because I know twins are insanely loud, and I have some idea as to what they sound like when you push them that hard. So, handled properly, this should tell me what the loudifying part should work like. And I'm finishing up for the day. I'm not going to keep going forever here, but I want to see if I can't get results out of this. And then maybe I'll run through some of the other possibilities, like Marshall stacks and things, high gain amplifiers. Because we haven't heard of those. We've done the undersampling fix, and that's getting us closer to the relevant sound. But the guitar leads here. Okay, we're doing it a little too much. What that tells me is I've got a couple of changes to make. One of these is going to become a cube root, and some of it's going to get dialed back. This is where it gets to, where it's like I am no longer speaking English, and I'm just muttering strange imprecations under my voice, but I have a notion of what is supposed to work here. Cube root of post threshold. Let's do a cube root of threshold 2. And we'll dial this right back to a much smaller amount because we're going away from it rather quickly. And then back into the breach. What did we get by doing that? Tell you one thing, I need to throw another log on my fire. Back over to here. Cab stack. There's a nice sequence of changes. Ears are super clean. We're starting to clip the air. We've gone a little too far as the bias. Let's dial this in again. because this is about our max. So you know what we're going to do is go back and put that back under the control of our output level control. Rest of this stuff seems fine. There it is. And now we're going to dial this in properly because that got into the zone. That, I think, got into the zone. Let's dial it in again. So less means going to basically silence, except for there's dry peeking through, so that's not right. And more means cutting it off without going to that extreme. There's going to be a sweet spot in there that sounds maximal. And that's what we're going to try to find. Yeah, my neck hurts. Some of this hunching over a laptop. Here we are. Oh, that ain't no good. Hello, that's interesting. Interesting. And silence. Okay, so that is what I thought was happening. What we are now hearing is essentially dry. So add more. And we start getting this crazy sound, which is more like what we want for ultimate loud. So that's too clean. It's not distorted enough. So Room Loud does this. I think one of these needs to not be a cube root. but the volume change does still need to be a cube root. I can't tell you why I have that feeling, I just have that feeling. The way that things are moving with each other suggests to me that the volume change is fine, but the other thing should not be a cube root. So back to square root for U, cube root for the volume trim, and that'll keep the level changes reasonable, and we'll go back to setting our output level. And once we're done with that, we can hear something else that isn't the Fender Twin. Because hopefully we'll have dialed things in to where it actually makes some kind of sense. Because yeah, this is me trying to get a particular tonality that should apply to many things. And it's coming into effect at appropriate times. So it's just a question of like, well, if I can do that, what do I do if it's a Marshall sound or something? And we'll see how it adapts itself to that. Oh, busted itself so hard it couldn't continue. There we go. And let's go back to something loud. Too dry. That sounds like it's about as distorty . Why? So first of all, 0.21. So I'm going to want to go with 0.21 for that. And secondly, the contour is not right. Where's our 0.21? It's going to be here. That's what it was, yeah? Certainly hope so, otherwise it'll be a big mess. And that goes back. And we don't want a power of 4, we want a power of 3, because a power of 3 is going to have the super loud stuff pushed farther over to the side. Unless I got that backwards, but I don't think I do. Needs to kick in more slowly, because it's becoming a very extreme effect, this. Replace. And Twisted wave. Same drill. If I was working on a modern computer, I'd have to reboot the machine before each one of these. This is another good reason to work on the older machines. At least for my workflow, anyhow. So here's our twin, but very quiet. Here's our twin with more of a loud sound. And then that becomes something that's kind of weird. We're definitely getting a weight on things. Just sounds like you're frying the microphone to death. Let's go back to the Strat. So the point here is, can we get a sort of Stevie Ray-like thing? Does have maybe just a hint of that amp is just far too loud. And compared to that, this is clean with the amp not too loud. Let's take that reverb off. Let's take that brightness off. Let's go for a more sort of blues junior-y sound. So we start bringing it real loud. Clean. Loud. I think a lot of this is actually going to live in that medium zone. Let's hear the Les Paul. definitely some final distortion on top of everything else. Again, no change in the pre-amp distortion. We're just distorting the air, we're distorting the room. I can smooth this out a little bit. It doesn't need to be as extreme as that. I'm getting so much obvious distortion on that I do not think that's going to be what I want. Maybe it's time to go back to that cube root. Or a combination of that and increasing that offset. Trim definitely needs to stay as the cube root. We don't need to keep pushing the gain of it up. Build. Very good. And now what do we got? We're probably getting pretty close to being done. I sure hope so. It's a long day of coding. But, you know, I'm going to be doing the same thing tomorrow and Monday. Point being, we're trying to make this good. Let's go back to here. Alrighty. So there we are. We can have a loud amp. Insanely loud amp. and then absurdly low down. Now, let's just do something else. No air. That was distracting me, I think. Edge instead of dirt. And vintage stack. Okay, that's loud. This one I want to find a sweet spot. Cab size is fairly big. Have loud. And now we have super loud. Let's do the higher gain. Boogie. Alrighty. Okay. So there's your Mesa imitation right there. Let's go back over to the Strat. Back over to like And then we have a Strat through your classic Marshall stack. So that is a really back over to the Les Paul. So that's pretty able to make the thing bark. And then the DiMarzio. Bass amp. Okay, there we go. So this is Caius, right? All the distortion, all the bass amps, all the size. Some people will use this. Turn it up all the way. That's interesting. I wouldn't say it was nice, but it's interesting. So there you have it. Airwindows, ridiculous band with far too much distortion, playing through bass amps with 18-inch speakers. There you go. It does sound loud and it does sound mic'd. That's pretty crunchy. There you have it, DI guitar in the box, which can do that. Little treble booster. Around here, we're starting to get into the voicing of what real loudness sounds like. And then beyond, It's just like complete overkill. So you have overkill on tap for when you want to get totally silly. But if you want to be realistic, you want to stick around here. Because by here, you're already like 6 times louder than a real amplifier. Yeah, this works. We can live with this. I'm going to call that done. I'm going to call that done. I got just barely enough time to make dinner before going somewhere. But I'm going to call that done. Next thing I need to do is make it into the VST plugin and put it out. But you should be able to get like Edge or Dirt or something like that before then. I'll probably put out Edge first. And we'll see where all this leads. Should be some fun. Talk to you later, anybody who's still here. If nobody hung in there as long as I did, well, this is my job, so I needed to. Anyways, bye-bye.